morning, buenos dias. I hope everybody's doing well. We're going to start with our ad hoc committee on housing, construction, and development services. We do have a quorum. Councilmember Perales, Councilmember Deb Davis, and Councilmember Foley are present, as I am as well. And we're going to jump right into our agenda. We don't have any work plan to review, no consent calendar, so we'll get into our reports. Good morning, team.
Good morning.
Y'all look wonderful today and ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely, we are. Good morning. I'm Rosalind Louise, Director of the Department of Planning, Building and Code Enforcement, and we're joined this morning by Deputy City Managers Kip Harkness and Kim Wallish. And as always, we have the Fierce Development Services partners here at the table. You'll be hearing from many of the partners later on in the presentation today. So our agenda for this morning, we have 3 key items. We're going to provide an update on our work on development services transformation. The second item is actually a new item that's been added to this committee agenda. We'll be providing you some update information on our progress on ADUs. And then thirdly, we'll be providing an update on our housing production numbers on our goal to 25,000. So with that, we'll start with our work on Development Services Transformation Team. So just as a reminder, since the team was established last year, we have taken a new approach to our work, and we're using a system that's called Objectives as measured by key results, or OKRs. And so for our work, we have set 4 very high-level objectives. The first one is simple, self-serve, and digital user experience. Secondly, clear, consistent, effective process, and these 2 objectives are for our external customers. And then we've developed 2 objectives for internal customers to staff, ensuring that we're having a strong collaborative team approach and that we have the internal tools to do our work. So in the second quarter, you can see here on this chart, this presents our outcomes for our OKRs in quarter 2. We completed nearly half of the items on the plan with substantial completion of 5 items. You'll note that as opposed to last quarter, more of our OKRs resulted in red outcomes, and I'll be sharing more in detail about some of the challenges we had on those items, as well as talking about some of the items that we were able to fully complete. So in terms of the OKRs that we were not able to complete, the team actually deliberately set some targets that were quite ambitious. We find that it's good to stretch ourselves and see how far we can go. And some of these were ambitious to really help us get ahead of the schedule with the upgrade to Amanda 7 and basically completing the user acceptance testing. And then some of these items were very ambitious based on our own internal process. So just for example, the first item that we unfortunately weren't able to meet, this was for the online fee and permit estimator contract. Just quite frankly, we ran into some internal challenges in terms of procurement and being able to focus on that. There were some other procurement items prioritized ahead of that. So we weren't able to hit that at 100%. For the two OKRs, we actually decided to deprioritize the second and third items in order to focus on OKRs that were of higher priority. And then also, we were really focused and have been focused on the last several weeks on the upgrade from Amanda 6 to 7. That is our key focus for the team. We are on track to launch that in November of this year. And so, again, we prioritize staff's time and attention to that. So that's primarily the reason we weren't able to make these OKRs. So to share with you about the things that we actually were able to complete, and just wanted to highlight some of these items. So the first one, for all new applications, The status will now be available online for our customers to see in more simpler terms and clearer terms. So previously, when customers went to see the status of their applications, basically it was either closed or still open, and now we have more detailed information regarding items that are either under review, items that are being noticed for hearing, and this is a key item for our customers, knowing that their projects are being scheduled for hearing, or indicating that we are waiting on a resubmittal from the applicant. The second item, to help our applicants get their applications ready for hearing with a minimal amount of resubmittals, the team has made the requirements for those applications packages as clear as possible. And so that way, by the time of the second submittal, our customers will have a greater chance of having complete information and correct material so that we can then move them forward to application hearing date. For the third item, for planning applications, our planners actually tested out a pilot process to provide clear requirements for single-family and tree removal applications upfront. And the team has practiced actually calling our applications ahead of their scheduled appointment times to ensure that, number one, they know the information that they need to have with them to provide the intake, and to make sure that all of those requirements are met and all of the documents are ready. We found in many instances, customers have scheduled intake appointments, and then when we get there for the appointment, unfortunately, the customer just didn't understand all of the information they needed to have ready. So in essence, it's a waste of their time, their appointment, and it's an appointment that we could have gotten another customer to take. And then lastly, around for our Sequent documents, the team has improved efforts to ensure that customers have received complete and comprehensive and clear comments after staff's very first review, so that, again, so that the applicant's second submittal can be accurate. We weren't able to fully meet our goal completely because we found that actually the time it takes to do Sequent review is more than the time period of the quarter. So we're going to be taking an additional look at this to see what additional data we can get to see how to ensure that we are making sure our customers are able to get the information they need so that they're ready for the next submittal. And now we're going to talk about the OKRs that we are proposing for third quarter. And Matt Lush from the Department of Public Works is going to share that information.
Morning. So I won't go through all the ones. We'll pick out some few key items here because obviously we can read through them. When we're setting these things up, we've already been in the works on these things since the beginning of July. They're kind of three big buckets, even though we have objectives, but they're things that are measuring, things that we're using, things that we've already built, and then things that we continue to build. And if starting from left to right, highlight one like on the simple self-serve digital user experience, we need to baseline and track that customer experience, that satisfaction about how we're using what our digital presence is on the web or on some kind of tools. And so we have to we're baselining that now so we can then begin to track. So that's the measure part. On the second column, clear and consistent and effective process. You'll hear more about this, but under baseline and increase ADU permit issuance within 2 reviews by 40%. So we have to define these metrics, and then you'll hear all the different things that the teams are doing around ADUs to get to that target. So we set this target. We think it's a measurable thing that's meaningful and significant to the applicants and to those who want to build, but then also something that the team can then measure and actually track through. Under strong and collaborative team, develop a change management plan for the A7 user training. You know, so all of our staff were upgrading an application that's sort of that is part of their core work. And so we need to have a training plan to get that. And so we're going to build out that training plan during this quarter so that when we launch, we have that plan we're just implementing. And then we built things in this last quarter with a lot of folders. So under the second one, 8 new Amanda workflows are adopted and in use by all teams. So So now we have to go then train through all these groups and make sure we built stuff in a small team and then go through all the different teams and what parts of those things were built in a prior quarter. So now we're training on those. So it's kind of this measure, use, build mentality as we keep going along. Under the great internal tools, the biggest one of all of those is this Amanda 7 application, upgraded and technology ready. We did a lot of work in the architectural work of building out the architecture, getting all the servers up and running, getting the applications on. Now it's getting all of the systems that feed into that, get them all tested, all validated from soup to nuts so that we can launch and be ready in November. Highest priority focus on the technical application side right now. And then a use case down at the bottom is the all San Jose mailing ad lists are created using GeoCortex. We presented at a prior committee and probably council several times about the utilization for mailing lists of this GeoCortex tool. Well, now we've tested, validated, now it's time to start using in this quarter for these purposes. So that's kind of a highlight of some of the things we could talk about, any particular ones you'd like.
So next, we want to talk a little bit more in depth about the Sequent process improvements that have been implemented and others that are soon to come. We know that Sequent really is the critical path for our development projects, and so we've been focusing on time on how we can improve the process. And Robert Manford, our Planning Deputy Director, is going to walk you through these items.
So good morning, Robert Manford. Last quarter, we reported to you a summary of our Sequent improvement plan, which were basically 4 recommendations that are eliminating the firewall, quality assurance of our documents, and then the creation of a Sequent consultants list, in addition to staff training. I'm happy to report that we've since then eliminated the firewall. We've started our quality assurance program, which is ongoing. We have also completed a review of our statement of qualifications from different consultants that responded to our RFQ. And as of yesterday, letters went out notifying who was on the list or who would not be on the list. We've also had 5 Sequent trainings so far for staff within the department and also our sister departments like DOT, Housing, and then Public Works. As you can see, based on our work in our Quarter 2, we identify certain tasks and goals that should be complete to better provide services to our customers. And on the 3rd column are some items that we will be working on in the future. Please note that the items on the 3rd column can be switched out with higher priority tasks if deemed appropriate. That is why they are tentative, and they are to revamp our standard operating procedures for internal and external use, establishment of our procedures for external review of our Sequent documents, and then the completion of our exemption guidelines for Sequent, organization of our web page content, and updating the standard permit conditions and mitigation measure list. A big part of it is also the development of and distribution of Sequent thresholds guide. All this work ties into the goals and metrics here. We have ideas of what the goals are and what they should be, such as the overall goals of doing all this work are to prepare better documents by reducing rounds of reviews, provide clear expectations to our customers and consultants for predictability, and have the consistent quality of products. One of the 3rd quarter work is to further break down the goals to clear measurable metrics that will be ongoing tracking metric for the team. That work is currently being done under Quarter 3 right now, and we intend to complete this by the end of Quarter 3. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robert. And now Matt is going to spend a little time digging into our schedule for the Amanda 7 upgrade. As noted here, we are on track to launch on November 12th.
So I think when we last met, I don't think we had the flag in the ground or a star on the page when we said we might be hitting that goal. And so I think it is pretty profound that we're able to. We said in 2019 that's our target in towards the end of the year. We have it on track. The team has done fantastic work in developing out all of those systems. And talking with the team. There's 19 critical integrations into the base Amanda system with other various systems that have to all get tested out and validated. There's just been yeoman's effort on all of the technical teams to get all of that stuff tested. Now it's all getting to those subject matter experts of walking through all of their different workflows on the new system, making sure they all work, reporting bugs, get those things triaged and fixed. And so staff is right now kicking into this long slug here for the next month or two of really testing every bit of their work that they do in the old system, in the new, and then getting those things ferreted out and fixed. On that third line is really important, this next stage in this communication that we're kicking off internally through both the executive and managerial staff of communicating to all the staff what this change might look like, setting forth that positive goal for when they're going to expect training and when they're going to expect access to all this. But then we'll also begin communicating out to our customer base that these changes are afoot, and so there'll be changes with our systems internally. They won't necessarily, the external customers won't see a necessarily change on the outside yet. That's forthcoming, and towards the bottom, as you'll see, will be an updated portal. But all of this stuff is foundational work that has to happen for the new portal to work and for the plan review to tie in. We have to build out this system first, and all of that will sit on top of it. So you'll see right in through October, all the staff will get trained through all the various groups and departments that use Amanda, and we will be launching on November 12th. Period.
Thank you, Matt. We will be launching on November 12th. So that wraps up the first portion of the agenda. So, Chair, I'm not sure if you want to take any questions on this part before we move on?
Yeah, let's take a little pause here and see if any of the committee members have any questions before we move on to the next one. Councilmember Foley?
I just have a couple of questions regarding the CEQA review process and why it's taking so long, and what steps are you putting in place to shorten the review process? You had mentioned that it was taking too long, so why is it taking so long, and what are we doing to shorten that for the projects to go forward?
There are a lot of factors that have combined to, or collectively combined to result in the situation that we are in right now. First of all, we don't have a pre-qualified list of consultants, so there seems to be only 1 or 2 consultants doing all the work. Currently, we have 30 EIRs in progress, and 1 consultant has 24 of them. That shouldn't be the case. So we want to encourage competition. That's why we're creating the pre-qualified list. Okay. Secondly, and most importantly, staff trainings. There's been a lot of staff turnover, so it hasn't helped in terms of CEQA review and then taking time to get staff to get on board in terms of what needs to be done. Reviewing documents takes a long time. So if we train staff from development review section, and even those at the permitting center, to know how to review CEQA, then they wouldn't have to wait for the CEQA team unless it's a big EIR stuff. So those two, and then also the quality control, internal, there's a lot of waste in the system. There are situations where you have a prime consultant whose budget is 10% of the sub-consultant's budget. It's very, very anomalous. So these are the wastes in the system that we are trying to improve on or eliminate.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question regarding staffing. You had mentioned that there's a lot of turnover. Can you tell me what is causing the turnover, where they're going? Do you do an exit interview to determine why they're leaving, and what steps are put into place to retain them? Because good staff and the technical side of the review staff is really important, so to continue to train gives you a huge learning curve for them and delays projects. So what can you do, or what is being done to retain staff?
Okay, to respond to the first part of your question, I've been here only 8 months. This is my ninth month. But what I see,
we're both newbies.
One most important factor that is beyond our control is the cost of housing here. So people move to other cities or other areas where housing is cheap.
Yes.
Secondly, we have a lot of work going on here. The city is growing. Downtown is one of the most attractive areas for developers. So there's a lot of work. As I indicated, there are 30 EIRs that we are preparing right now. And from what my boss tells me, it hasn't occurred in the 5 years that she's been here. So there's a lot of work for even junior planners to do. A lot of smaller cities around here, there are less work and they get paid better. I've even been contacted by 2 nearby cities who would like to recruit me.
Don't go.
So these are some
We may
of the
not be able to
factors.
pay you more, but we love you more.
Thank you. So there are a lot of factors. These 2 are the most conspicuous that I have seen so far, but maybe Rosalind can chip in.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that in terms of our turnover, I mean, one of the things, we have opportunity for promotion, obviously, when you have vacancies. So, you know, it's very rewarding and people are ecstatic when they're able to move up and get supervisor positions or move up from a planner 2 to a planner 3. And we've done a lot of that over the last 6 months. But again, it just creates a vacuum because we're still having to backfill for those promotions. And that's another key factor in it.
Are we looking to San Jose State or other universities to partner with them to recruit, to bring in planners as they graduate, obtain their degrees? It seems to me, you had mentioned housing, and I know that's huge. I run a very small mortgage company, and I've lost 2 people out of my 6 people to housing needs, and they've been with me for 22 years. So they're moving to Texas and Sacramento and other places. It seems to me the one thing we could do is speed up the Sequent process and build more housing. But I know they go together, and we have to solve the problem together and not take care of one thing at a time. But they are all problems that we need to solve very quickly. And I know once a project is approved, that doesn't mean housing is going up right away. It takes a long time for housing to be built. So are we recruiting to bring in young people who might stay with us for a while?
Absolutely. We have a very good partnership with San Jose State University. In fact, I would say probably over 75% of our planners come from San Jose State University. We have a great success story in terms of the interns that have come from San Jose State. We have actually 1 staff member now who started out as an intern about 5.5 years ago. He's now a planner supervisor. So we are definitely always in communication with San Jose State University with their programs and recruiting students from them.
Okay.
Councilmember, may I add?
Sure.
The city manager's office with the planning director has taken the issue of how to retain our experienced planners very, very seriously. And we have conducted a compensation study, and we will be coming forward in September with some recommendations to modify the pay ranges for the planning series. We've heard loud and clear from our development community that they are more than willing to pay more in fees if it means that we can attract and retain quality people. So we're taking them up on that, and we have a specific proposal that will come to council in September.
Will that be part of the universal fee, or no, it's something else? And I haven't heard that, so we do have builders who are saying we'll pay more to get staff.
This has been a
Builders
topic
out
of,
there who are
you know,
saying that?
of ongoing, been a topic of ongoing
Yeah, okay.
concern that through the regular fee program that they pay for their projects to
Right.
go through the development review process. To the extent that we have resources there, we should be using those resources to make sure that we're competitive in attracting and retaining planning staff,
Right.
because the turnover and the vacancies affects the time that it takes
Right.
and the quality of the process to review their applications.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. I'm glad we're thinking about how ways that we can retain and offer increased compensation packages, and I know that affects other employee groups and all of that. And I'm not to say that planners are more important than any other bargaining unit within the city of San Jose. That's not my implication at all. It's just we're here in this committee right now focusing on a particular problem. So in looking at the lists of things that you want to focus on, the next things that you're looking for to improvement and modify, which are the things that have the least effort and highest reward? and which have the highest effort, highest reward?
With regards to the third column, I would say the least effort and highest reward will be the completion of the exemption guidelines. This will allow low-level planners, not necessarily within the CEQA team, but development review and permitting, to be able to do the most basic CEQA analysis so that they wouldn't have to rely on the environmental team.
Great.
The highest will be the last to develop and distribute a CEQA thresholds guide. That entails a lot of work, and that we might need a consultant to help us. And so, if the budgetary resources are available, it'll be helpful.
But it would have a tremendous reward, is what you're saying?
That's correct,
Okay,
yes.
very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Foley, if I could also add, I just wanted to highlight that first item in Q2, eliminating the firewall, and I think we've shared this with the committee previously. Eliminating the practice of the firewall will save tremendous amount of time. We've already heard from many of our customers, how much time is being saved, because now they are now allowed to review the draft documents, whereas previously the practice was they were not. So now that they have the opportunity to review draft documents and make modifications to their development projects, they can then make those changes and get them back into staff so we can review them. So eliminating that practice has saved, I wouldn't say weeks, I would probably say even months. So
Oh, wow.
that's a huge change for us.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other, Councilmember Davis and then Councilmember Perales?
Thank you. Really appreciate having the review of the previous quarter's key results and the outcomes of that. And it was very helpful to look at that and get that story explanation. As we're looking at the Q3, what came up for me when I was thinking about the two is that we didn't meet all of the OKRs in Q2, and Q3 has more in every case. So what has changed to make you all agree that this is a more ambitious plan, but more likely for all of these OKRs to be met?
Sure. Well, I'm a confident person, as I've already expressed, we'll hit November 12th. We're not going to get 100% of these done. We've set goals that are very ambitious. Many of them have multiple dependencies. So not all of these will be green when we report these out.
Okay.
It's sort of the nature of this type of work and this activity. We're certainly endeavoring and pushing, but if something slips on a timeline, we have a primary course on the technology side, and we have multiple teams working on things on process side as well that is separate and connected to the process improvements. And so when you look at something like the Amanda 7 upgrade, that has to happen for all of the other stuff to work. So if, let's say, the top second one down, the online fee permit estimator contract, if that has to slack because it takes resources away from the Amanda 7, we're letting that slack intentionally. But we believe if we could push things, if things all go great, we can get them all done. But knowing that there's things that are out of our control and there's multiple dependencies, lots of other things, as Robert alluded to, many things that are pulling on the staff to try to get things done. It is a large list. We've contemplated maybe shouldn't have been as large, but this is all, there's lots of work going on ADUs. Do we not report a target of what we're doing on that ADU work? You're gonna have a long conversation right after this about ADUs and what all the activity that staff's doing. We debated a bunch. Should we put that on there as something that this group is monitoring and put a measuring approach on it? Yes, it's a heavy lift.
So which items are, I get that all the Amanda 7 items, which there are a fair number of those as well, are critical path. Are you thinking like if they're more on the internal side, it looks like? So are you saying the external items are ones that can slip?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's just whether, so some of it is whether you have a planning staff looking at some internal improvements that will have the measuring effects on what the external stakeholders would feel, improving those processes and then measuring, did we hit that mark? They might not be the technical staff putting the software on, but they'll be part of the testers of their workflows. And so it's not that it doesn't happen, it's just, it's a pretty big team of 15 to 20 people touching this a lot of their time. And so it's certainly not one type of persona that's doing all of this work. It's a very diverse team of very technical people to very technical planner people, but focused on very planning-like activities as opposed to installing software, testing connectivity, and so forth. Is that?
Yeah, that's helpful. So, in terms of, I get that not every item will be green by the end of the quarter, but the items that are not green on the end of quarter two, they're not all, and I'm just scanning, but it didn't look like they were all on the quarter three. So what happens, it's a little bit different, your reporting seems a little bit different than what we have in smart cities, where if something drops off, we have an explanation for why it dropped off.
Okay.
So what happens to these items that, select 3 metrics for user experience and establish baseline data? I didn't see that there, but it does say baseline and track customer satisfaction. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
I see a nod.
Eric, why don't you make that more than nod?
Hi, Erica Graffo, Process Transformation Lead. Yes, so it's not verbatim, but we did incorporate the OKRs that we missed in the future OKRs, and we'll definitely take a note to make sure that that's a clear connection going forward.
Great, thank you.
Is that it? Yeah.
Councilmember Perales?
Thank you. So I actually had the same question. I was looking at some of these that I didn't see listed as OKRs for the next quarter, but taking your last answer that all of these are incorporated. Yes, I would say the only thing that would be helpful would be if we could read that and simply understand it, right?
Yeah.
So then the only question I have then is in regards to the challenge that we saw with the procurement process for the online fee and permit estimator contract being signed and having expected that to be done, and it's only 20% complete. You listed that the procurement process slowed the progress on it. Could you just elaborate a little more on that?
So there was 2 things there. One, we needed the budget approval that happened in June. That was one thing that wasn't listed there as one of the reasons. We couldn't have had a contract, and we could have done some of the contractual work, but we didn't have the budget until it was approved at the end of June anyway. So we would have had to have missed this target just by that factor alone of having.
Did we know that coming into this, or did we kind of maybe miss that coming into this?
Well, that's one of the risks we put in setting a goal 3 months ahead of time of what all the dependencies, what the possible outcome could be. And so that was one of it. And so we intentionally focused on some of the procurement activity around the contract with CSDC for the Amanda build, because again, that's also procurement activity. If we can't, it's literally pushing on the same procurement staff in purchasing to get that done. We had to get the CSDC contract amended. That all happened through the June activities as well, and so we had to sacrifice one or the other as far as time as importance. So it was an intentional choice to pull back a little bit so that can go forward, knowing that we could work on it this quarter, and we are.
Okay, I guess I'm just more trying to get to, could we have known this ahead of time rather than set that up as a goal to be more realistic about it and say, actually, we think this is what we're going to run against. We're run up against the budget, right? And then timing on getting actual, procurement out, and then set a more realistic goal that says, well, we know we can't get all of this done. And I guess it's similar to what, Councilmember Davis's question was, is that, all right, it looks like, and your answer was, we're setting ambitious goals, right, that we're not going to hit them all. I am just curious if we could also, while we're being ambitious, to bring in some reality and just say, okay, which of these do we know for certain? And that way we don't come back with, more of these incomplete ones that actually, had we have thought a little deeper, would have been incomplete. We would have known they would have been incomplete from the beginning, so.
If I could just lean in for a second, this is actually a fantastic conversation that I'm enjoying tremendously. These are exactly the kinds of debates and questions that we were having internally as we mature our use of OKRs. And so please keep them coming. This is very helpful to us. Just a couple of notions that we'll take out of this and track along. One is, I think it is very important to understand where a missed OKR, our key result goes and how it tracks forward. Second, to your point, Councilmember Perales, if you look at the way that Google uses their OKRs, they distinguish between key results which are commits and key results which are stretch. And so I think if we go ahead and give ourselves that distinction at the beginning and say, this is a key result that's a commit, all the Amanda 7 stuff, for example. This is a key result that's a stretch. And that allows us to know, is red meaning I have made some serious mistakes that I need to correct on, or is red meaning I'm learning into something, and be able to make that distinction. And I think your questions for me clarified that might be useful to follow that practice from Google into our working.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to the same then sort of resolution that we have on the other sort of description of these items that were incomplete.
Yeah.
Just making it more clear in the wording we're using for the next quarter, as well as this. I think that would be great, right? To put it in, knowing which ones are maybe the stretch or the more ambitious asks, and then we could even maybe up here we could do a little more patting on the back to say, hey, look, you hit a couple of those stretch goals, right? Versus, hey, it looks like we missed some things. So.
And then just two quick things. Part of the reason there is so much packed into this is a push quarter. We had an initial quarter to say that, can we do this? Do we want to keep with this partner? Do we want to keep with this team? The answer was yes. We had the second quarter to build a little more capability. And this third quarter is delivery. And so we are expecting a lot because we have a stronger team this quarter than we'd had second quarter or first quarter. And you'll start to see a shift going forward where as we do the product launch, you'll start to see some ongoing metrics that appear time and time again. A lot of this is sort of what I call inside baseball, and it's interesting to us, but it's not necessarily interesting to the audience watching. You'll start to see some higher level metrics that we track over time that we hold ourselves accountable against that make sense from the public and make sense all the way down into the Joes and Josephines doing the real work.
And I'll just end by saying, back to Councilmember Foley's question on staffing, I know occasionally we have had some updates on staffing, hiring, kind of retention in this committee. I think it would be good to have one, hopefully if we could, either before or shortly after we make maybe this recommended change, as you were talking about, Kim, and then a follow-up at some point, 6 months or a year later to see, right, if there was an impact on that. Because I know we've had many conversations about this, as Mayor Liccardo was leading last year, and that's where a lot of this discussion came out of, right? And we've had this brought up in closed session, and so I think that there's, I'm interested in seeing how this makes a difference, right, after we bring forward some of those recommendations.
Yeah, we are too. I think that's a good suggestion.
I think that's it. I like that, ambitious stretch. But maybe we can do it with little fire flames, like we're on fire, because I think just as you were saying that, I had a little aha moment because we're always asking our teams as well, I think, to stretch, to go beyond their limits, to push the envelope, as we're serving our constituents, as we're thinking of how we think outside of the box, right? And so, but when you see 0%, when you see 25%, so it makes the report look different. So I think we need to figure out how to fit that in so that we know that we're not failing, you're not failing, but you're reaching beyond what your initial expectation was. So anything above that is a success. And so, I'm trying to think of, because now I look at it differently. When I hadn't even read that ambitious stretch goal until right now that you said that. And so I'm thinking, fire symbols, I don't know. You're on fire. But anyway, so we're going to move on because I think, I do want to ask just one question regarding the CEQA staff. And I know that you were understaffed when it comes to that, and you're talking about staff turnover, folks moving, and we're seeing that everywhere. That's just the reality of our area. And I don't know if that's ever going to change, truly, regardless of how many housing units we build. I heard a very interesting conversation the other day that as we're building and the kind of homes that we're building, what we are in essence saying also to the future generations is you will not be a single home owner, or you won't own the kind of home that we've always had dreamed of, little picket fence in a backyard for the kids to run in. Now you're envisioning something that we had thought of like in New York or in San Francisco even. So it's a very different vision now that we're telling our children. And so some people like it. Some people are really not liking that new dream. They're just not. I just spoke with a young couple and said, this is not why I moved to San Jose. And so now what you're telling me is that that's what I have to settle for. And so they're hustling like crazy to find that little home in Willow Glen. They're pulling together everything that they have within them because they said, this is not my dream. And you're selling me something different. A really hardworking couple. And I hadn't thought about it that way. But that's what now I have to talk to my children about. That's the new reality of San Jose. So that's also something that we have to talk to our new workers about who might be relocating, that it's not the San Jose that they may have envisioned at one point. But I wanted to, the question I wanted to ask is, for other cities in California that might be experiencing some of the, I know they're not experiencing the same kind of market that we are, but similar, I think, like in Los Angeles, you've got pockets. Is the city of Los Angeles experiencing the same kind of turnover, do you know? Do we know? Have we compared those numbers?
I personally came from the city of Los Angeles.
So,
they have turnover.
I guess the grass is always greener.
It
You
depends.
thought it was
Have
not,
turnover.
you thought it was gonna be more affordable for you here? So was this one of the reasons? You thought housing was better here?
Not
Oh,
really.
okay. But is there a turnover as well in Los Angeles?
There is, but not as high as here.
Oh, but it is.
And I
Is
can
there-
give you one example. San Jose is a city of 1 million population. We have only one historic preservation officer. And when I say one, just only one. City of Los Angeles has one historic preservation officer with 25 staff. So the workload makes a difference.
The what?
The workload,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. How many CEQA?
The
staff?
planning department has quite a few.
Yeah.
And then not only the planning department, I was with the housing and community investment department. I had a staff of 20 doing CEQA, and then 15 doing land use stuff. So.
Okay. When you think of the size and population. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, on to our next agenda item, which is the ADU process and enhancement update.
Thank you. So if you'll indulge me, my apologies, but we got the slides a bit out of order, and I actually want to start with slide 13, because I really wanted to provide context on our work on ADU. So we've actually been working on ADUs for a little over 2 years now, and I just wanted to make sure everybody understood the series of council direction that we've received. So the council's been focused on this for quite some time. So you'll see back in March of 2017, council gave direction, and actually ADUs is on the priority list. We actually did 2 rounds of changes to our zoning ordinance to relax the requirements for our ADUs. So that was completed back in 2017. We also made sure that we wanted to update our public information work and make sure we had, first of all, a website with information available. So that was first launched in 2017. And then we got direction from the council to do some work on developing some options for a potential ADU amnesty program. And so that work is underway, and we are on schedule to come to council on September 24th with some options for you to consider. And then this year, there were 2 memos from the council, approved by council, that furthered our work on ADUs. The one in May, the Yes in My Backyard program memo, and in that memo, we received direction to create an ADU master plan, and that has actually just recently been completed. We'll be talking more about that a little bit later. We also got direction about around impact fees and reducing overall cost of permitting for ADUs. We received direction about creating an incentive program to encourage residents to build ADUs, and so providing a forgivable loan in exchange for a 5-year level of affordability for rents for ADUs. And then lastly, we received direction to design and set up an ADU showcase, and we are working on that plan in conjunction with the Housing Trust for later this fall. And then June of this year, there was a memo on the moderate income housing strategy. Again, further direction to create some tools to help customers around ADUs. So the first was establishing a universal checklist, and this has actually also recently been completed and is now posted to our website. So this is very helpful because originally the requirements for ADUs from planning, building, fire department were located on different websites and different bulletins, and it was very hard for our customers to navigate. So we now have compiled and unified everything into one checklist to make it easier for our customers. Again, we have initiated the ADU master plan, and what this is where vendors, designers, contractors can come to the city and to say, hey, I have an ADU design plan that I want pre-approved by the city, and that way it'll make it easier for our customers to get through the permitting process. So we have completed it's a foundation designed with one company, and that is now done. And we're looking now at about over a dozen of other vendors who are very much interested in getting a master plan on file with the city. So that'll be very helpful for our customers. Thirdly, we got direction around fire department requirements, and you're going to be hearing a little bit later about those changes and, again, consolidating requirements into that universal checklist. And then the last 2 items are in progress, an ABC intake form for our customers, and then lastly, an automated permit issuance process that we are now researching and underway. So with that, I'll take you back then to slide 11, where I just want to talk a little bit about, again, the popularity around ADUs, very much excitement from customers about the potential of adding an ADU to their lot. So in terms of the permitting data, you can see here, the number of permits issues has just grown tremendously. So particularly, just wanted to highlight, in 2018, all of 2018, we issued 190 permits for ADUs. So far, just in the first half of this year, we've issued already 191. So we fully expect by the end of the calendar year to probably issue at least a total of 400 ADU permits. So you can see that great increase. Now, also just want to take a look at the data around applications submitted, because we do want to take a look at, for our customers who are submitting ADU permits and then don't complete the process. So we do have some information on that. So first, I think and foremost, some customers start the process and then for various reasons decide they don't want to build an ADU after all. And so we're working on trying to figure out what those reasons could be. Some people may decide they didn't realize how costly it was and they're not really financially prepared to do it. Or perhaps they no longer need the ADU unit. So we're going to be working on getting that data. Secondly, there are applicants who take longer to resubmit plans, so we may not be seeing those permits issued in the same year in which they were submitted. Probably not a lot, because on average, it doesn't take multiple rounds of review for ADUs, but that could be a factor. And then lastly, yeah, there's some applications that we're receiving, let's say, toward the end of the calendar year that actually don't get permitted until the following year, so they would show up later. So those are some of the reasons why we're looking, seeing those numbers of applications submitted and not moving forward to permit issuance. So also just wanted to provide context about where are these ADUs being built throughout the city. And we had a staff member actually go back and go get some data about construction of ADUs. So we actually went back to 2005. And since that time, over 1,000, it's actually 1,046 ADUs have been permitted and built throughout the city. And just in terms of the breakdown among council districts, it's really District 6 with the highest number at about 200. But Districts 5, 1, and 8 are all around about 100 and 120 ADUs in those districts. So, and you can see from the dots on the map how they're distributed throughout the city. So also, in addition to the council direction that staff has received on streamlining the ADU process and promoting ADUs, staff is also doing a lot of other work, and just wanted to highlight some of these items for you this morning. The first item we're tremendously excited about. We're calling this point of contact person for our ADU customers an ADU ally. And this is really modeled after our small business ally program that has been ongoing for quite some time. And this ADU ally will really be like a liaison between the customer and our development services partners. This person can answer questions, get people pointed in the right direction in terms of requirements for ADUs. And we're very pleased that we're going to be adding a new FTE later this fall. But until that time, we wanted to make sure that we identified someone in the interim, and we're really excited that Sarah Scholl in our building division, and Sarah, wave your hand so people can see you. She has volunteered to serve in this role in the interim. So we're very excited that we have this point of contact for our customers. Secondly, another item we're really excited about is an initiative we're calling ADU Tuesdays. And so basically, we have set aside Tuesday as the day of the week where we're going to, obviously customers, ADU customers can come into the permit center any day of the week, but on Tuesdays we have staff set aside to focus on our ADU customers. So number one, for customers who are ready for their applications, and we have express appointments set aside and dedicated to ADU customers alone. So those express appointments throughout that day on Tuesday will be serving ADU customers. And Sarah will be the one helping giving assistance to customers to make sure their applications are ready for review by city staff. And it's at that point that these applications are ready to go. And at the end of that appointment, that customer can walk out with a permit for their ADU. So we're super excited about that. And then secondly, We'll have staff available. We'll actually have a dedicated submission line for our ADU customers just to review their applications, make sure there are no gaps, and to ensure that those applications are complete. So we'll have staff dedicated for that as well. Our ADU website, we have done tremendous upgrades to the website and changes to the website to make sure that our information is easily accessible, that it's easy for our customers to navigate. And Cheryl Westling, PPCE's Public Information Officer, has been spearheading this work. So we really see this as a resource for customers. They don't have to come to City Hall, go to the permit center. There's a wealth of information that exists on our website. We are also looking at creating an ADU kiosk that will be housed on the first floor in the permit center of City Hall. And again, this is just one place where we'll have a variety of information on ADUs, on requirements. We'll have the checklist there, and all of this information will be available in 3 languages. So we'll have it in English, Vietnamese, and in Spanish. So we see that as a great tool for our customers. And then lastly, we are working on an ADU workbook. This will be a tool, it's like an introductory document for customers just to help them get started. They're in the early stages of the process, to help them get started and move through the process. So because we're so focused around permit issuance for ADUs, we do want to set some targets, some metrics. We want to measure how successful we're being. So we have debated internally and come up with these 4 measurements. The top 2 obviously are pretty simple. How many ADU applications are being submitted? We're tracking that now. How many that we're permitting? We'll be tracking that and actually have that data monthly. And then the bottom 2 measures are really about making sure our customer really has a good experience and can get their ADU issued in a timely fashion. So we're going to be tracking that duration of how long it takes to get through the permitting process. And then that 4th item, we'll be looking at the permit issuance within 2 review cycles. And honestly, my goal is that if we can get this really down, very simplistic in terms of, I know that every lot is different in the city, and there's probably not going to be 2 similar situations across the city, but we think with the ADU master plan, that's really going to help. My goal, quite frankly, is that most or many of our customers can get through the process in 1 review cycle. So the goal is, number 1, making sure customers have the requirements up front so they know what to submit. And then we have the staffing available, particularly on ADU Tuesdays, so we can get our customers through the process in 1. We're going to start with 2. We're going to track 2 review cycles, but ultimately, for many of our customers, in 1 review cycle. And next, we're going to ask Chief Sapien to walk you through the fire requirements around ADUs and some of the things they've done to clarify and simplify the process.
Good morning. So the increased number of ADU applications surface opportunities for us to make clarifications to how we would apply the fire code, make sure that our staff understood those interpretations, and that we provided clear information so that our customers understand what we're trying to achieve. We went through a few steps to get there. 1, we looked at our peer agencies to determine how they were getting through the increased ADU applications and how they were applying the code. Secondly, we did a review and internal assessment of what the code required and where and how we would apply it. And then finally, we worked to improve our messaging to our customers to make sure that they received clearer information and information that was timely in terms of their application process. As a result, we developed a clear and comprehensive list of fire requirements included in the universal checklist. The little fire hydrant you see there says simplified. I would say we clarified how we would be interpreting the code. The example that's shown in the slide has to do with the required distance from a water source to the structure, and we went through various conversations, just for example, on this one. The difference between requiring a fire hydrant to be from the distance from maybe a large building where we would drive up with a fire engine and hook to a sprinkler system is different in terms of how we operate relative to when we pull up to a house that has a fire problem, where we would extend hose lines from the engine to the problem, right? So just a little difference in terms of what the intent of the code is and how we're achieving safety for those structures. And then finally, this process also resulted in some streamlining, again, in terms of when applicants receive our requirements and clarity to what those requirements are. Thank you.
So we'll pause here to see if you have any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Foley?
I have a few questions. Thank you for the report on ADUs. This is one of the areas that I have been advocating for since I've been on council, and even before that. It's the low-hanging fruit as far as adding new housing stock, and it could be the cheapest, most affordable housing that we add in a quick timeline. So I have a couple of questions regarding the application submitted, the permits issued, and then occupancy. You have the number of the permits issued, which I did rough calculations, came up with 521 through 2019. But how many have been completed? How many final permits or how many occupancy permits were issued? Do we have that number?
I don't have the occupancy data with me today, but we can certainly get that information and report that at the next meeting, or we can get it to you as well in the meantime, in terms of the 191 issued thus far in 19, or really in totality, how many have actually been occupied? We can get that data.
That's what I'm curious about, is the permits issued means they started the process.
Started construction.
Right, but did they complete it? So is that the best grade to find that out, is the occupancy
The
permit?
occupancy permit.
Okay. So that number would actually be helpful, so we would know where we're successful. And then I understand from there, trying to figure out why they're not moving forward, and you mentioned that a little bit. And I don't want to add any more work to staff, but maybe if we could, do an online email to them or something. Why are you delaying? Just want to know, is there something on our end we can help you with? I don't know. It could be completely economic issues. They moved out of the area. They don't, not bothering. They don't have the need anymore. So there's lots of things. So thank you. That number would be helpful. I'm looking at the map of where the ADUs are built, and I'm kind of surprised, actually. So only because D9 seems the perfect location for ADUs. They've got a lot of single-family homes. They've got reasonable-sized lots. It seems like it would make sense. So can you give me an idea as to why one district might have more ADUs than others? Or is there a policy implementation that would affect that? Or you don't know why, it's just the way it is? And any answer is okay, I'm just curious.
So I'll start out with this answer, right? So in some districts closer to downtown, we have lots, that were built at a certain time that, for example, have detached garages, for example. And those are probably not in an area like
Right.
District 9, but are
Right.
closer in areas like District 6 and 5. So I would imagine that's
And
part
3,
part
right.
of the reason.
Okay.
And again, it may be that, we have to do a better job of promoting, making sure that people understand that this is an option for them, right? If they're interested in adding an ADU to their lot.
So the detached garage makes perfect sense, actually, because I know several friends are in the process of trying to convert their garage into an ADU, so that makes sense. I do appreciate that you are, where's this report? Where is this part? That you're bringing an amnesty program to us in September. I really look forward to seeing what that is. And the other report regarding the forgivable loans, I think that will be helpful too, and overcoming a financial burden to some of our folks who want to install ADUs but do have a financial impact, but are willing to make it affordable for 5 years. Regarding the ADU ally, I love everything that you're doing around promoting ADUs and making it simpler. That's really important. These are people who are not sophisticated, for the most part, developers. They just want to build a ma unit in their backyard, or accessory dwelling unit, whatever we're calling it. And they need help and they need an ally. So I love that term. The FTE that you're adding, will their job be exclusively to be the ally for ADUs, or will they have other functions that will pull them away from the ADU responsibility?
No, the ADU ally responsibilities will be their 100% role.
Okay. And then once we fully roll out the ADU Tuesdays, I'd love to see a report on how effective that is. I think that's it for me. I'm really excited to see what you're doing and how we're moving forward to make this easier, simpler. Of course, less expensive is something that is important, but some of those fees we don't control, some of those the school districts control. So we have to talk to them a little bit about the implications of that and whether there's any wiggle room there. But I really appreciate this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments from my colleagues? In terms of the permits that were issued, I think we had discussed it when you came into my office. Do you have the disaggregated information regarding the standalones versus the garage conversions? Any way of looking at that info?
I'm looking at staff, James and Chu. Are we able to pull that out of Amanda in terms of attached versus detached?
We should be able to, from existing data, the accuracy, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's been done a long time ago. And we are kind of targeting those existing garage in kind of amnesty program. That's something that we are looking into, so we could maybe get more data at the time.
Okay. So there is a way to have some sort of, from the 1,000 plus, to see which ones are the
garage
new ones,
conversion.
the amnesty programs, the standalone versus the garage conversions.
Yes, we have certain data that we can retract
Mhm.
and maybe provide some context to that in the next
Okay.
meeting.
And in terms of the, what are we calling it, amnesty or grandfathering in of those garages that have already been converted, are we letting folks know that they can get their units legalized? I don't know what we
So
want
we are
to
in the
call it.
process of looking into that, but I would defer that to Rosalind.
Yeah, so we are now looking at various options for the amnesty program. We're looking at several cities who have amnesty programs in existence already, and we'll be bringing different options to council on September 24th to present to you and get further direction on which way you want to go and to get the program established.
Okay, great.
So that'll be September 24th at council.
Okay, thank you. And my apologies, I should have done this during the first report, but I wanted to give an opportunity for anyone who wants to make comment after this report as well, because I know that there was a letter that was submitted. There might be someone that might want to speak on this report. Usually we have our clerk collect any yellow cards. I haven't seen any yellow cards, but you can come up and speak, and then you can fill out a yellow card afterwards. Go ahead, Jean.
No yellow cards.
Okay, we'll get them to you. If you could just introduce yourself so that we can have you on record.
Good
And then-
morning, I'm Jean Dresden, and I'm here today on the ADUs because I attempted to do it myself. I did not bother submitting an application, I just tried to do all the prep work in advance. I was gonna use plans from another city to save some costs. I bumped into a couple of problems. I have a large lot, a tiny home, and a 450 square foot maximum size ADU, in other words, a studio, which isn't gonna generate a lot of rental income. It was difficult to find financing, and the contractors said it would be a long time because of the delays with building inspections. There was no way to be able to get an ADU quickly because of that. There was no fast track. So I was gonna have to carry a loan without any income for up to 2 years. I found it hard to find financing. There are no products available for ADUs. I do not have an existing mortgage to rewrite. So the only product that was out there was to try to find a lender who would do it with a duplex type loan, and this was too small an ADU for that. It was very difficult. If I could find one using very aggressive rental escalation numbers, it looked like a 12-year or more to break even. I was gonna have to carry all those costs. And I'm coming to a point where I'm getting to the end of my income years. This didn't look like a really good idea. So, huge land, lots of availability, willing to do it. I can't put the package together. And I also want to say that the upfront costs of the permitting seemed fine to me, and I could front load that. The Turner Center at UC Berkeley says that when they did a survey statewide, only 29% of the people who built ADUs thought that the upfront permitting cost was a problem. So maybe your complaints that you're hearing about the permitting costs are those 29% and not the barrier. I would hope that the city would look into how it might get its lobbyists to have the state legislature to help build financing products so that we could do this. That would be a helpful step. And perhaps look at streamlining building inspections, fixed appointments, or having some contractors become partners who qualify for self-certification, as is done with apartment buildings where they self-certify rather than getting annual inspections. And finally, because I'm a park person, I'd like to say that over $1 million in ADU fees were collected last year, and the Parks Department is supported, is cost recovery through the Park Trust Fund fees. The entire executive staff is covered by is paid by Park Trust Fund fees. Had to bring that up, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other public comment? Thank you, Jean, for your comments. Councilmember Perales?
Yeah, I don't know if staff, do you have any better understanding? I know that the Housing Trust, I was just looking it up as well, has a program to provide some financial assistance for people wanting to erect an ADU. Do we know of any others? And are we also sharing that resource online?
So I know that on our ADU website, we do share, and I'm looking at Cheryl, that the Housing Trust is one of our partners. We can certainly just provide a link to their website so that people can get access to their financing programs. We can certainly do that. And I know that when we do the Housing Department and PBCE, when we do come to council on September 10th, we'll be sharing the information on the loan program.
Okay, yeah, I know that I've heard this obviously right as well. There's not many opportunities, at least that I know of, and I haven't been through the process like Jean just mentioned to try to go out there and seek some financing options. So that was it on that piece, and then I don't know if we have to make a motion to approve these verbal reports, but we didn't do it for the first one. No, we don't. Okay, good. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Thank you. So I pulled up the ADU page, and there's the universal checklist that you were talking about. And it looks like the minimum max size is 600 square feet, Jean, I don't know if you were doing this before we updated our ADU ordinance, but we did increase the size for even small lots, 3,000 to 5,400 square feet. The maximum floor area is 600 square feet. So does somebody have something? Is it, please, if,
Cheryl Westling, Communications Manager. So there's more to the size requirement than the lot size. So something else that can affect the size of the ADU is the size of the main home. Or is that for an attached? That's
It's a
for
maximum
attached.
50% of existing home square footage.
so that should be clarified in here, in the size question in number 9 then.
I think that size requirement is explained one step down on the universal checklist.
You're right, it is.
So.
Size
so-
area limitation, gotcha.
Yeah,
I only
sure.
ever saw the table. I go straight to the tables. So it sounds like because you have a very small house, you'd have to add on to your house first to have a bigger ADU.
Well, and there is such a thing as an attached ADU, so I don't know if that could be an
So it
option
has to be these are for detached. If it was attached to the home, it would be a different
Is it
size.
a different size or same?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Robert, it's more our zoning ordinance. But I think that the goal is that we don't want to have an ADU to become a primary residence. So I think that 50% limitation is because that's one of the reasons. Whether it's attached, detached, I'm not sure.
I will look at a different way. If you want to do attach, that's addition, because there's certain definition of ADU. That means you have to have separate the kitchen, facility, everything independent. So you simply you can expanding your main house as addition, but in order to qualify as ADU, you have to have all the facility. Then you have the limitation on the state code saying you cannot be more than 50% of your main house. So in a way, to work around could be like you recommend is expanding your main house, but that's just addition, but still not ADU. You have a bigger main house. Then the state say your ADU can be 50% or less. So I don't know that answer your question.
It
in
answers
some
the
way.
question. It just
I think
it defies
the-
practicality.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the state law intention was trying to preventing someone has a bigger house getting too big of ADU. Didn't think about what if my house originally is very small.
So this
That-
is a state requirement, this 50% requirement?
State does have that. They have a different requirement. Is we use that develop into our zoning code itself. We can certainly look into it.
Okay, so this is something we could change. Is that, I just want to clarify.
So if it's something
We
in our
could-
zoning ordinance, absolutely, we can make a change, an amendment to that, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is about Jean's statement about the estimated time to construction. 2 years is a really long time, especially if you're building this ADU for income, you're not able to cover that. We're not developers. Single-family homeowners are not developers. What is there a plan for prioritizing inspections or helping that process go faster so they're not carrying that mortgage for longer than they absolutely need to get those things done? That has a nice benefit as well of bringing housing units online sooner.
Yes, absolutely. So the next part of the work is to take a look at how we can improve the inspection part of it. We know the first part is getting people through the permitting process. Both James and Chu have been working on improvements on the inspection side citywide. And obviously now we're going to be taking a look at how we can do a better job for ADUs. Chu, I don't know if you have anything you want to add?
I will probably say 2 years for construction or waiting for inspection is not acceptable, but certainly we'll look into the independent or individual cases. I don't know what, there's so many variables in there. In general, if we're talking about something 300 or 400 square foot ADU, inspection process should be very simple, just really just a feel of it. So we certainly can look into it, support, see why it take that long. So overall, we can look into it.
So I think this is a prime example of when something is so new and it's exciting, and there's, what did you say, build, what was the mentality? No, I like the stretch piece, but anyway, yeah, you know, we're learning, so it's moving and it's growing, and we're shifting, and it's a jujitsu move, right? Because when we went and did the press conference on Monterey Road at the prefab location, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the location, but they had prefab homes, and they're doing prefab ADUs, and it was a one-bedroom prefab. It was 450 square feet, I think it was. Maybe it was smaller than that. It was $30,000. They built it in a week and install it in your house. 1 week. And so I don't know how long it takes to inspect it. I don't know if anyone has already purchased any, but he told us when I followed up with him, maybe 3 months after that, that the orders for those prefab are going through the roof. And his company where they're assembling them is down in LA. He's got 3 of them, and they're taking orders like crazy, because now folks are actually looking on how to scale, and they're actually looking on how to stack them so that they can go 2 stories and make sure that they're safe. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, and I don't know if that's a possibility. But at least in terms of ADUs, a one-bedroom, a beautiful one-bedroom, by the way, I might add, ADU was $30,000. $30,000. So I'm not sure why we keep looking at $200,000 and $250,000. I don't know where that number keeps coming from. Well, it's construction, I understand that, but we need to make sure that we look at all our resources and all the availability, and make sure that this is an accessible option for folks, and so that it's not a 12-year break even, because then it defeats the purpose. People should be able to break even within a year or 2, in my opinion.
So, Councilmember, the company you're referring to, Alliance Manufacturing Homes, staff is actually in contact with them, and they're very much interested in being part of the ADU Master Plan program, because we know, to your point, that they've got a product that we think would do well here in the city of San Jose. So to the extent that we can have, get their plan sets and get them pre-approved and have that for our option for our customers.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Perales?
I wanted to see if we could maybe make a motion to direct staff on looking at the policy change on this 50% limit for smaller properties.
Right.
If it looks like the intent was for larger, and I think the direction I would like to look towards would be something that would be just smaller than the main house, right? So like, you know, I'm not hooked onto 50%, right, or even 75 or 80 or something. The idea would be, we're not trying to sort of grow it, and who knows how much backyard somebody might have, but if that was sort of the intent, and so I'd like to make that as a motion.
I'll second it. I think you mean, instead of the property, the dwelling unit.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the current policy, we have a requirement of the ADU is less than 50% of the primary dwelling unit. And so in its total size should be less than 50%. And what we heard from staff was that looks like that's kind of deriving from statewide sort of initial policy that might have been looking at larger homes and not having another extremely larger home. And for us, it's affecting small units, smaller homes, and making them even essentially, again, what like Jean was saying, a 450 square foot maximum requirement for her home. So the idea would be to eliminate or look at eliminating that 50% requirement and then finding where a better number might be. And I was suggesting just less than the square footage of the primary dwelling unit.
And that's regardless of whether it's attached or detached?
I don't know if
Because I thought that made a difference.
I think this is only,
Oh, it says attached.
This is for attached, yes.
But you were trying to, yours was gonna be detached, right?
Yes. And it's, the chart was at the time, and I admit it was before the most recent change, but.
We need you on the microphone so that it ggets recorded.
Yeah.
So we need you on the
I
microphone.
was looking at detached, and the chart at the time was saying 50% of the original home. And then when I reread the new chart, it seemed to me it said the same thing.
is that in here that we're just not seeing it? Is the 50% also reliant on the detached as well as the attached? Do we just need to scroll further?
So as I'm looking at the checklist right now, so the item 10, we're talking about the
Yes.
50%. That's specifically for attached. I don't see any attached, but
rear yard.
get into that and get back with.
If I could make a suggestion, I think that I always learn something from Jean, and I think what I'd like to do, if it's at the pleasure of the committee, is what we could do is maybe test out a little bit our ADU ally, and sort of come back, sync with Jean, understand the specifics of the case, because I think I want to do two things that are a little bit different. One, I'd like to help Jean with her use case, and then if there are larger policy changes or zoning changes that are implied from that use case, come back to you all with how that fits into the larger work plan, and suggestions on that. So if that's amenable, I think that, because what I want to do is I want to get good service to Jean as a community member in San Jose, and I also want to get good policy making, but not try to do both of them at the same time.
No,
if
agree
that's okay.
100%. I think that's considering our bit of confusion, so I think that's a good direction to move forward, so.
Thank you.
I just want to echo that I completely agree with that approach, Kip, that you work to resolve Jean's problem, and then if the policy, what's at issue with the policy, and come back to us if there's a recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. To come back with a recommendation, and maybe not the 50%, but it could be if, that we maybe say an ADU cannot be larger than 50% of the home or X amount of square footage, so that we don't have someone with a very large home building huge ADUs, right? So that the team has some time to put some thought into that.
When you still have setback requirements and all
Yes,
of that, too, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
So the last quick item, we only have one slide, so I'm going to ask Chris Burton from the Office of Economic Development just to provide a brief update on our housing production numbers. And he is also joined by Rachel Vanderveen, Deputy Director in the Housing Department.
Thanks, Rosalind. Yes, Chris Burton, Rachel Vanderveen. We, together with Michael Brio in the planning department, kind of serve as the functional leads for the housing crisis team and housing crisis work plan that's moving forward all the items related to the current housing crisis work plan. So as part of the regular updates at this committee, we're bringing back the housing production numbers. Just to remind you, we're focusing on 4 key areas, and the reason we're looking at these 4 key areas is these are the points at which the city has an impact directly on housing production. So firstly, we create capacity through policy changes that sets the stage for housing to be built. We approve the entitlement process, that, you know, moves those units along, obviously the building permit, and then at occupancy when we final those permits and they come through to fruition. The intent of looking across this continuum is to show that the work that we're doing now, a year and a half into a housing crisis work plan, is translating to results that are moving through that process. So we expect to see it stacked at the front end early in the process, and then that will translate to units as we get towards the end of this process. The significant changes I think we wanted to just highlight briefly as we look at the January through June, which is the new addition to this chart that you're seeing this time, is that, you know, there is an uptick in the units receiving development planning approvals, which is good. That means that changes that we're making at a policy level are resulting in those. There's actually one big project that gave us a significant uptick in that, and that is the Star City Aviado project, which is the co-living project, which is 800 units of the 1,300. But that was a policy change that we made. We responded quickly to a market condition. We said, you know, here are the changes to the zoning code and the fee structures we need to make. And then this is where you're seeing those numbers translate through. As that project moves forward, hopefully in the next 6 months to building permits, it'll see reflected, you know, in that next column, and then hopefully within the sort of 24 to 36 month time frame, we'll see it appear in occupancy. So that's the significant change, and Rachel and I are available to answer any questions as you have them.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
I appreciate the production numbers, thank you. I do have one question, and it's just because it seems like there's some uncertainty in the market. Are the applications down this year? Are you seeing
I'm going to look at
and
Alex
this might be a
and
question for Rosalind.
From what I've heard anecdotally, yes. I haven't seen the hard numbers specifically on number of units being applied for and what the type of units are.
Yeah.
I think there's still some interest in the development community about looking at new opportunities, but it is limited and it does seem to be kind of running thin.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is convert the planning approvals that we have to
Right.
building permits. That's really our work.
Right. And what you don't see in the chart, and this is important to remember, is there's a whole lot of planning approvals that sit outside of this time frame that are currently on the books and that could move forward.
So they'll show up in
So they don't-
occupancy or
Right,
building permits
as they come
sometime
forward,
later?
yes. Right.
So it's not just whatever we have in column 2 is the only thing available in Goose column 3?
That's correct.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Are we getting fewer prelims, Rosalind, fewer applications? What's your sense?
Interestingly enough, I would say we're getting probably more prelims because people are coming in with ideas, testing, seeing what potential challenges or obstacles could be, particularly for downtown. But I would say in general, in terms of just number of applications being submitted on average, we're seeing a slight decrease, yes, overall. But
Okay.
still, again, interest, because we're getting, there's an uptick in preliminary applications being submitted.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Council members? None? So at the end of the day, we're going to be beholden to that beautiful number that our wonderful city leader put out there and said that we would make, which was 25,000 units by the year 2023.
It's up there.
Yep.
And so our response right now, if a reporter were to call us to get the hot scoop, would be, well,
So the goal is to have 25,000 housing units approved under construction or built by 2023. And I think, we're behind probably what you would expect that to be to achieve that goal. yes. However, I think the city, what is the real story is the city is doing everything it can to make those units available and drive the market to a place where it can achieve that goal. So when we look at the sort of capacity add through policy work and the proactive work that the city's undertaken, whether it be through, increase in density through OEI, whether it's transitions to urban villages as we come back later this year with North San Jose, we're doing everything we can to affect the market and give it the opportunity to build and make that goal. Ultimately, private investment and development will achieve that number versus the city specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that everyone is hard at work. This is the crisis of our time, other than, I heard my son came in at midnight last night to show me the mourning, the funeral that they had in Greenland for the first iceberg that melted. But, if we don't save Mother Earth, then this doesn't matter, really. But this is the next crisis that we're experiencing, and I understand that. So we're all trying to figure it out. But it's still needs to be mentioned that we're still not currently on track. So we're pushing ADUs, we're trying to streamline, we're trying to figure out that maybe it doesn't cost $250,000, maybe we can lower the price, maybe we can promote it more in District 9. Encourage Pam Foley's neighbors to put those in there, or whatever it is that we need to do to get the permits down, or look at construction costs, or get the inspections through quicker. But Pam Foley, Councilmember Foley, you have a question?
Just a quick question. I know in District 9, we may not be having a lot of ADUs, but I have a lot of preliminary applications for senior housing coming in. So is senior housing, will they be included in this 2,800 number?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
It will be, okay. So you can add about 5,000 units when all, I'm kidding, but we have like 6 or 7 senior housing projects coming through in D9 if they make it through.
Yeah.
Shows the aging of the D9 population. Just saying.
Of all of us, I'll be
I
moving.
embrace them all.
I might be moving there once I'm turned out.
You're welcome.
No, but good point, because I know that there's been some meetings that are being held where even for senior housing, folks are, which really surprises me, folks are very hesitant, cautious.
That's a good word.
About even building for seniors. And I thought that was about the safest population we could build for, and yet folks are not as welcoming as I thought that they would be. And it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that our message is one that is inclusive of all our populations. We're all going to age. We're all going to need different kind of housing. That 5-bedroom home that some of us have may not be the most appropriate. We may have to downsize and leave that home for the younger generation that, may be populating it with their own little ones. And we'll go into, hopefully not, but assisted living. But I think we need to be able to have those very frank conversations. We don't think that we're going to age. We don't think that we'll need help in the future. We don't think that we want to downsize, but it happens. And then, of course, we have folks who are just in very difficult, challenging situations that just need housing, period, any kind of housing. And so we need to build and make room for them in our beautiful city. And so we need to have those conversations and try and get folks to just understand that this is the crisis that we're facing. Any other comments? Okay. Do we have any comments from, please? Thank you.
This development services transformation update is really cool. It's a great shiny object. We're all looking at it. I think at the last meeting, which was about a quarter ago, I commented to all of you who were fairly new to this committee that a couple of things have happened to the committee. One is you, for whatever reason, are only meeting quarterly. Number two is that many of you came on and had no idea what had been done for the last 2 years. So I'm sitting here thinking today, remembering that there were conversations and presentations to you by the various staff here, talking about were they meeting the metrics that were established 2 years ago. One of those was timelines relative to public works review, 30 days, 20 days, 10 days. Some of them were related to the building department. Some of them were related to the planning department. What happened to those metrics? Are they information not being kept anymore, or is it being kept and simply not reported to you? They were things that were really important on a day-to-day basis here to move projects along, whether they're residential projects or others, that are impeded by the inability of Public Works, for example, to meet a deadline that they've established but they can't meet. I have no idea whether it's only my projects that Public Works is not responding to, or it's generally across the board. I would ask you at your next meeting, which it could be a quarter from now, to ask the staff to bring back the metrics that were being given to you. They may not have to present them. I know they have a full agenda, but bring them back so you can look at them and so some of us can stand up and say, look, that metric isn't being met. It's very important that Public Works meets the timelines that they are done. Because the inability for them to do that means that Roseland's staff can't meet the timelines that they've established, and it has a ripple effect. And it's very unfair to the planning staff members to not be able to respond to people like me because Public Works can't find a way to meet the schedules that they have. So I would ask you to ask for those metrics again, and I hope you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
Good morning, Ray Hashimoto, HMH Engineers, and I wanted to echo exactly what Jerry was talking about. But believe it or not, we're friendly competitors, so we know what each other are doing, and no, Ruth and Goen is the only one that's not getting their stuff quickly. And so it'd be nice to see what those metrics are like. I know that Public Works is 20 to 30 days behind whatever their printed targets are. And that's problematic, and that means Roseland's staff as well gets pushed back. So I hear about staffing, and we've talked about staffing for 20 years and how they should be compensated differently and how we should be trying to maintain staff. I'm a refugee from San Jose. I worked here for 10 years. I worked here from 85 to 95. So turnover isn't anything new, but we haven't done anything about it now for 25 years. So, you know, what's happening with that? We talk about that, but nothing seems to happen. And what happens most of the time is we're in an unprecedented economic boom. Now we're hearing permits are a little down, and it just sort of gets right-sized over time. And that's sort of unfortunate because the time when we really needed it, we're understaffed. So I have a problem with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Any other comment?
Just, Madam Chair, responding to that, is it possible to have the metrics that they're requesting at the next meeting? Just as part of our packet?
Well, we could have it at our next meeting.
Okay.
But Kip, would you care to respond even briefly to this? I know that you're not prepared for it, but I'm new as a new chair, but.
Yeah, no, I think the part of what we've done over the last 6 months is really focused, as I said, on getting the replatforming of the technology. And so to the points that were raised, that means that some of the metrics we've been kind of coming back to the committee before, we haven't been bringing back. So we would like to come back to the committee in the next quarter with a sense of what we think are the key metrics to track. We can go back and see what the ones that we're reporting out were before. The only note of caution or sort of debate around that I would say is part of what we found is that some of the metrics that we were putting up, we weren't necessarily using to manage our services and weren't getting back down. And so what we had gotten ourselves into a little bit on the staff side was an exercise of producing some numbers for you that weren't necessarily reflective of how we were managing our work. Part of what we've tried to do with the OKRs is align the measures we're using to the work that the actual crews are doing, so that when you say, hey, this is an issue here, and it very well may be, that there's a through line back to changing or improving the process. So we take it as a challenge to come back to you with metrics that matter, and that includes things like, are we meeting our cycle time? Are we going through the system both on public works and planning? But we wouldn't necessarily recommend coming back wholesale with the same set of metrics, but we do think that that's a good piece to kind of debate and decide on. So we'll take that as a challenge, and if that feels appropriate, we can go deeper into that into the next quarter and see if we can begin to meet the needs of our staff, of you all as a public, and also as our customers in terms of holding ourselves accountable for speed and the level of service that we're providing.
That sounds good.
That sounds good. So my concern is, as we're talking and we're looking at our numbers, and as the conversation has evolved, one of the things that we've all talked about, we're looking through this, the report, and the conversation has been robust, and you've heard the feedback from the council members, the committee, that we're trying to meet our timeline, we're trying to meet the customers' excuse me, needs, but we're hearing from just even two members here that their timelines aren't being met. And so we're hearing it right from, excuse the expression, no disrespect, but right from the horse's mouth, right? And so really trying to get feedback from them, I think, is the best thing that we could, we don't need a survey, we don't need cold calling, we don't need to do any poll checking. I mean, right there you have two folks that are saying, we're not getting our needs met. And so I would just really invite this conversation to take place offline to see what do we do to help you help us in resolving the crisis that we're experiencing here in San Jose, because I see them not just as customers, I see them as partners in what we're experiencing. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely, please.
I just wanted to add one thing. It's just Jerry and I are here, and I don't know, it looks like there's a lot of staff out in the audience, right? So
yeah.
There used to be a bigger, representation from the development community, and for some reason, I don't know if it's because the meetings are farther in between now, and maybe the advertising for it is not as good. It just seems bad when Jerry and I are the only ones here. There might be others, I'm sorry, but it just seems like a light turnout.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is an open meeting, it's a public meeting. Sometimes folks contact us directly, and sometimes they contact you directly. So hopefully folks are well aware that this meeting is taking place. We'd love to hear from our partners out there. We'll make sure to reach out to individuals and let them know that they're here. Jerry?
Can I just offer
Sure.
A view on that? In the beginning, this was called the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee, okay? I can tell you that for a year and a half, a week before the meeting, Rue Veracruz sent an email out to every member that she knew in the development community who would have an interest. With Rue's departure, that disappeared. So I think I would encourage you as council members to find, I don't know who's sitting over here would have the responsibility of making sure that there is outreach. And the outreach, keep in mind that everybody's busy, people are busy, they don't look at your calendars all the time. I mean, I think one of the frustrating things is when a staff says, go look at our website. Just, can you give me an answer? Don't tell me to go look at the website.
Right.
And that's what's happening. I sit here and listen to some of this, and the fear that I have in some of the language that's being used here is that the staff, more and more is going to go on the website, which is going to drive the staff to have less interaction with the customer. Less phone call, fewer phone calls. My wife would be rolling. Fewer phone calls, less direct connection, but this incessant desire to say, just go look at the website. Go look at the website. I think we have to keep that. I'm hoping, Kip, that is something that you are aware of and acknowledge, and that if Google is reaching out to their customers by phone, then damn it, we ought to be doing it, right? Every civil engineer, every planner should be making sure that they're talking to people, not just pointing to a website. Thank you.
Point well taken. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, with that, any last parting comments? Well, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you because this is such important information for us to take back to our staff and to our district and to all the folks that we're working with. And we'll continue to work through, again, one of our biggest crises that we've seen in our lifetime here in the city of San Jose and really throughout the state of California. But thank you so much. We'll see you in a few months, and we'll be following up with you between then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, take care.